So whether you're engaging with family or you're not, the holidays are going to be hard. They're usually hard for everybody, especially if you grew up in childhood trauma. And many of you have asked for a video like this that are some tips about how to get through it, how to work ourselves through it when we're triggered or when we're struggling with going no contact or struggling if we are going to be engaging with our family. So I've broken up this video into 3 categories where we do have to engage with family around the holidays, where we're going solo, and the third category is kind of a miscellaneous that is applicable to both categories. And I find that the healthier we get, the more that we work on ourselves and our self-esteem goes up, our tolerance for abuse and dysfunction goes down. So I just want you to be thinking about that through this video. So let's just dive in. So category 1 is when we do have to engage with family. And actually this category, as a side note, might make you rethink all of this stuff about making these plans, just FYI. So the first one is set the boundary, but expect some fireworks afterwards. So if you're sort of saying, I'm not going to be talking about politics this Thanksgiving, you can expect a little bit of passive aggression or some digs. Or if you're saying, I'm not going to get into the calories that I'm counting or my weight or I'm not going to be talking about why I'm not having dessert, or we're staying at a hotel just to get some personal time after, all that stuff those are examples of boundaries. But you got to expect some pushback, like, well, you know how I feel about things, but I guess we can't have a debate about politics. Well, someone's really sensitive about pumpkin pie, so I'm having mine, but I didn't want to say anything. All of that like BS that happens in our family system. Just because we set the boundary doesn't mean that they won't find ways to make fun of it. Hopefully this is making sense to you. And who cares if they do? You know, one thing about it is they're looking to get a reaction from us. So the more that we ignore it is a powerful way to have some power over this stuff. And if we react and if we get triggered, there's still a part of us that is trying to get them to change. So I know that sounds like a big kind of like, well, why would you go anyway? I think that's what I meant by that side note. And number 2 on the list is don't bring your inner child with you. I know that sounds weird, but only approach time spent with family from your inner adult. This is kind of a visual to maybe leave your inner child at home with somebody that you trust, like a therapist or something like that, and you only go into these events from like your most fortified best self, which is probably going to be your inner adult. The inner adult is the part of us that knows that we don't lose our truth even if someone like wants to debate or like doesn't do the boundaries or is passive aggressive about the boundaries or you get little digs. So in short, don't bring your inner child with you and let all that snarky backhanded BS or overly feeling like responsible for your family members if they're really, if they're really stuck or if they're really dysfunctional. Just go into it from the adult, and then it's a mission impossible. You're getting in and then you're getting out. Number 3 is that you want your family to be a little bit afraid of you. And I know that sounds odd, but what it really means is that we want them to be on their best behavior because we might leave the family gathering, but we don't need them to understand. Meaning like your mom says to your dad, like, well, Dale, don't bring up any of that gender stuff because it's just gonna really upset the apple cart. And I know, it's just like such special rules and such pain in the ass. We don't need them to understand, but it is a lot better when they don't bring up the gender stuff. So again, this one is really, really tricky in the way that they don't have to get it. They just have to do the request. Hopefully that makes sense. Number 4 is surf the trigger and expect it and accept it. Meaning that what I mean by surfing a trigger is about being on top of the trigger instead of drowning in the trigger. And you're on top of the trigger when you notice that your brother-in-law or your brother-in-law's wife or whatever, they might say something and you're monitoring that. You're monitoring like, oh, that's kind of provocative, instead of being like, what the F do you mean by that on the inside? And then you're all in that sort of pain and suffering. It's to be expected. If you're going into this with some fear, this whole family gathering stuff is, at best, it's going to be like no drama and kind of sad. And at worst, it's going to be high drama that you're not reacting to. So when we surf the trigger, we're more in our inner adult like the prior one. and we're just aware. And it's a little bit like, yep, typical. I knew that they would sort of maybe say something like that. Cue the next one, cue the weird laughter from the other ones. I'm still okay. That's being on top of the trigger, not drowning in it. The next one that I have on the list is called plan it out. What I mean by that, if you're going to go visit and do some travel plans, make sure you really come up with a backup plan. Local hotels, how are you going to travel back? If you have to kind of leave in the middle of this because it's just like buttons get pushed on purpose and it goes beyond you surfing the trigger or not bringing your inner child there, like if they're really inappropriate around your partner or your kids or something like that, I want you to go into this with a plan. Watch the hotels around you, put some extra gas in the tank, or whatever you have to do to make sure that you have an exit strategy. And even part of that exit strategy might be like deal breakers, that they do start talking about politics, that they do make comments on your weight, that they do act weird around your kids, the no-go areas, and it's just like you just pack up your stuff and go and you don't owe any explanations. So there's that one. Number 6 is expect a hangover. And inner children kind of have magical thinking about how things are going to go. There's no way, if your family is dysfunctional or has an abuse history or has huge elephants in the room, there's no way to not have an emotional hangover if you go around people where there's major problems and elephants in the room that is still not really being addressed. It's like these are like almost like diplomatic missions between Cold War-like countries, you and your family, and you're just trying to get through a meal, and you're going to be kind of exhausted after that. So a hangover for a couple of days is going to be pretty normal on this, and there's really no way that we could not be affected, because we wouldn't have the hangover if we would go into these events and people were working on themselves and if they were being authentic and there really could be some resolution to some major conflicts. So that's number 6. Moving on. Now we're in the second category about what to do if you're doing this alone. Number 7 is allow and welcome some grief. Like, don't fight the feelings around this stuff, because this is a really hard thing. You know, despite whatever your situation is around the holidays, not having the container that is our family, because the holidays are really about family, and not having the container of having a family is just really hard. Grief is going to come up, some sadness, some pain. Don't fight it. I find the more that we kind of lean into those emotions and we sit with them and we address them, maybe through dialoguing with our inner child, those hard emotions get processed and go away kind of faster. So don't fight it so much. Don't fight not feeling that, you know. So if you have to go and have a bit of a cry, go do that. And when we don't fight the feelings that come up, we tend to want to fight it more. So that's number 7. Number 8 is have something to look forward to. A movie, a special thing, kind of a special dinner before or after the holiday, like the day before, the day after, something that you're actually looking forward to that is good enough. Don't just leave it to the last minute where you're just kind of caught around, you know, like the holiday and you're just trying to like muddle your way through it. Really think ahead and really think about what would my inner child sort of like that is good enough, because I'm going to be away from my family. Like a special movie, a special meal, something that is like celebratory that you can come up with on your own. That's number 8. Number 9 is reclaim a tradition or make one up. You've heard of people who got really disgusted with sort of religious holidays and they went towards more pagan celebrations like winter solstice or something like that. That's what I mean about finding a new tradition or finding different ways to celebrate a dark time of the year. A new tradition like simply hosting other people or welcoming other like abusive family refugees, or taking a walk, taking a specific walk, a place that you would like to go to, and then having a meal afterward. Like kind of make it to be your own thing. These, as a side note, these are not going to feel good until we kind of celebrate the empowered reasons about why we've gone no contact. Because if our inner child is like, if our inner adult has gone no contact, but our inner child is still massively suffering, there needs to be a lot of bridging work with our inner child to make these things feel good enough. Because otherwise, we're just going to feel abandoned by all that stuff. Hopefully that makes sense. Number 10 is do something inner child based. Does anyone remember doing like, you kind of trace your hand on, and you make a turkey out of your hand? As goofy as that sounds, that would like make your inner child really happy. Doing like the snowflake, you fold paper on white paper, you cut out something crafty. If anyone remembers, I'm talking about Western sort of like Christmas kind of holidays, like putting popcorn on a string, putting that around a tree. Something around that is child-centric. Like doing those in grammar school, they used to make links of chain links around like construction paper that was different colored. I used to love that stuff. Something like that. You know, the holidays are really child-based. They're really for kids. They're sort of for that family kind of a thing. So to be doing something that is kid-based, you might kind of balk at that, but give it a shot. You imagine how you feel. Number 11 is take a risk and connect with others who have maybe gone no contact, or related to what I said about hosting some other refugees. Is my first Thanksgiving away from my family after going no contact was I made a whole turkey dinner and just one friend showed up. And I had a lot of feelings about sort of not being connected. The world felt really small. The world felt really dark. But I did have that friend, and we kind of got through it together. But later, some of the best holidays that I've had was with other people who were just kind of free-floating through the holidays, and just spontaneously we just made the best out of it. So there's that one. Number 12 is remind yourself that the real gift for this is not welcoming the abuse of your family in your life. If you've gone no contact, now is the time to really, especially around the holidays, is to remind yourself why you've gone no contact. Because the inner child is going to be longing for family, and our inner adult kind of needs to almost celebrate being empowered, as painful as that is. But being empowered, it looks like we're not putting ourselves into the line of fire of dad making those comments about our body. We're not putting ourselves in the line of fire of watching your parents like get really nasty with each other in front of the grandkids. Like you've gone into this thing with a new set of values, and I want you to celebrate those values. And if what I'm discussing actually sounds kind of way too casual about going no contact, or sounds insensitive in the way that I'm talking about it, I just want to remind you that it takes a lot of abuse for a person to go no contact. And I'm not talking about someone's parents disapproving of one of like your partners or something like that, and they said something small and there's a little bit of a row in the family. I'm talking about years and years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, and the family is just really an unsafe entity. So that's what makes someone eventually go no contact, and even makes the holidays a very hard time of the year. So I just wanted to be clear on that. So going into the third category, these are just miscellaneous. Number 13 is let go of the holidays getting ruined. Inner children can feel like your mother-in-law being involved in Christmas Eve is going to ruin the holidays. Like you might really struggle with all that, but I want you to really find your inner adult. This is in the case that you are engaging with family in some good enough way, and really try to make the most of it. Because if we just focus on the triggering thing about the family event, you're just going to suffer more and more. And a really good trick is, like, your mother-in-law might be a huge pain in the ass, but focus on something that you enjoy. You've like something small, candy in a dish or some kind of food. Focus on something that you enjoy, and also parent your inner child around. It's just a couple of hours. It's just a couple of nights. Like, you can do this. Hopefully that makes sense, because it's just, if we just focus on how triggering that person is or that dynamic is, it's just going to make the whole thing worse for yourself. Number 14, this is a big one, is don't go over the top. And what I mean by that, if you're going no contact or you do have to engage in family, don't exhaust your finances or your emotional resources because you wanted to pull out the perfect, like, Clark Griswold Christmas, and you wanted everything to be perfect, from the lights to the food to the presents. That tells us that our inner child is really trying to compensate for a childhood that got lost, or there's really not the connections that we want. And it's really not good for us. So try to practice smaller, good enough things. Don't make the whole spread. Maybe do a potluck with other people bringing different components. I know I sound like Martha Stewart or something like that, but that's what I mean by this stuff. And don't go buy expensive presents for, like, your sister-in-law's cousin's kids. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't make it to be about this overwhelming thing, because how do you feel at the end of all that? You're going to kind of feel like you've overdone it. You're going to feel like it's an exhausting kind of a thing. And lastly, number 15, the last one on this list, related to what I just said, don't just get through the holidays. And I know many of us, holidays were just a time of more abuse, but find ways to make them your own. Find something small and enjoyable to be present for. You know, getting through things is just like our childhood. My childhood was just getting through one survival mode thing to another. And it's really not good for us. So to try not to dread them so much, and to find little pockets of joy, little pockets of things that you can be present for and celebrate, as opposed to just the drudgery of the whole thing. And lastly, I was so busy on getting through the list that I'm Patrick. I'm a licensed clinical therapist. I'm a childhood trauma survivor, and I specialize in childhood trauma, dysfunctional family systems. If you're interested in doing some work in a community and doing some inner child work and seeing some live Q&As with me, I host a monthly community membership, which also gives you access to all my e-course work. If you follow the white ball up here, or maybe up there, I never know where it is, you can find the link and learn more about that membership. And as always, I hope that this has been helpful. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be joyous. Have a good holiday, and I will see you next time.